Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
This is General Quarters. If you're a veteran and would like to share your story, email me. Email me at generalquarterspodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's generalquarterspodcast@gmail.com. Welcome to the General Quarters Podcast, a show that focuses on warriors and warships. A look at the historic and modern-day adventures that have shaped the battle space. I am honored to have Commander Tom O'Malley with me today to discuss his career as a young sailor on riverine patrol boats to a commanding officer of coastal warfare almost 3 decades later. Hey, welcome aboard, Commander. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here.
Well, Commander, let's first get kind of a quick download, if that's possible, right, on your overall career. It is most uncommon, it is very uncommon to meet someone who started off, as a seaman in E1, the beginning ranks in the enlisted ranks, and retire at a full commander in the Navy. So I'm just kind of interested, how did we get from there to here?
Pretty interesting. Actually, as a very young child, growing up in South Boston, one of my career goals as a young child was to become a commissioned officer of the line in the Navy.
Of the line. I love that term.
And that's exactly where it needed to be. And that was the only choice, a commissioned officer of the line. Through my young years, I always read everything I could about, naval heroes and all that sorts of things. And everybody had sports heroes, as I did. But I also had naval heroes. When I was in high school, I finally decided I wanted to go to the Naval Academy and become a naval officer. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, my eyesight was way too poor for that. So that was a non-starter. Of course, my grades might have been an issue too, but we'll leave that for another discussion.
Okay.
So I eventually, after I graduated from high school, went to college and was actually thrown out of, or actually asked to leave Boston University because of an incident that occurred in 1967 when there were these marches going to the Pentagon against the war in Vietnam. And I was on the other side of those things. I left and I went down and tried to join the Navy. And I was told, sorry, don't have any room. My waiting list is way too long. And I was getting drafted. Mm-hmm. And I eventually, through some fortunate phone calls to my uncle, who was the former aide to the Speaker of the U.S. House, John McCormick. Yes, political influence can work.
Never heard of such a thing in Boston, Commander.
Yeah, in Boston, never.
Never.
I went and saw the actual director of the Selective Service in Massachusetts. And while he didn't agree with my choice of services, he told me to get downstairs and see the Navy recruiter, which I did. And frankly, the Navy recruiter I went to see was the same guy the day before that said, I don't have any room for you. Mm-hmm. When I went down there and told him Colonel Feeney sent me down, the funniest thing was he said, why didn't you tell me yesterday you knew Colonel Feeney? I said, because I didn't know him yesterday. A week later, I was in the Navy and off the Great Lakes, still with the dream in the back of my mind of becoming an officer somehow, some way. Okay. It didn't work out. Went to Great Lakes, went to my first ship, which was a combat cargo ship out of Little Creek, Virginia, USS Capricornus. Not the glamorous cruiser or destroyer or aircraft carrier that, every sailor, I think, really kind of wants. I was on this plodding old beat up tub, but it had landing craft on it. And I got assigned to boat division, which for me was really fortunate because then I got to learn how to drive landing craft, the LCVPs that basically won World War II,
Mm-hmm.
The Higgins boats. And then to the larger boats, the LCMs, landing craft mechanized, and then to the salvage boats. When Capricornus was getting decommissioned, I was transferred to USS Guam, which was a helicopter carrier. When I went aboard there, I was immediately assigned as the captain's coxswain on a captain's gig because of my status as an assault boat coxswain that I had achieved aboard Capricornus. While there, I was fortunate enough, or unfortunate, depending on your point of view, to be assigned to a Marine unit that was going to jungle warfare school in Panama. Really interesting situation for a sailor to be dumped in with a bunch of Marines or a Marine recon team
Mm-hmm.
to go through the jungle warfare school run by the Green Berets in Panama. And I thinking to myself, I'm on a ship. Why do I need to know this? But it was eye-opening and led me, helped me understand how the ground guys worked and how they operated, especially the Marines. Shortly after that, I had volunteered for Vietnam earlier than that. Once I had become an assault boat coxswain, because I figured the Navy spent this time and effort to make me a boat guy, I should make it worthwhile and, quite frankly, go to the war. I'm not going to lie, I was influenced by watching Victory Sea as a little kid
Mm-hmm.
and John Wayne movies and let's go win the war. Went to Vietnam, assigned to general duty, and was on a yard utility craft running supplies to the Marines up along the DMZ, which was okay. At least I was in Vietnam contributing. Eventually got assigned to down to Na Bay, which was a base south of Saigon on the edge of the Rung Sat Special Zone. While there, assigned to base security, one of the things I had to do is go around and at curfew and get all the guys in from town at night so that they weren't vulnerable to being attacked by Viet Cong and that sort of stuff. But it sort of was a little interesting about, geez, here I am in a war zone and I'm worried about guys having their shirts tucked in and their boots shined.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed a little odd to me. Eventually I ran into a guy that I had met at the Jungle Warfare School who was assigned to an advisory team to a river patrol division in the Vietnamese Navy up north of Saigon. And I asked if he had any openings. And he said, yeah, we do. So I put in for it and immediately was accepted and went to a river patrol division of the Vietnamese Navy as an advisor. I was the only advisor there at a team of about 12, I think, who had not been to advisor school. So I had no language training, none of the culture training, none of the stuff that they had. But they were basically short of people because their casualty rate had been significantly higher than other boat units in the Rung Sat. Anyway, I did over 200 combat patrols on the rivers. Were amazing. And one of the things I will tell you as a young kid and being influenced by World War II movies and all that sort of propaganda, because it really, that's what they were.
Mm-hmm.
Propaganda works. You wanted your first firefight so badly because you wanted the loop on the back of your black beret to be cut, and it couldn't be cut until you were in a firefight.
I see.
When I finally had my first firefight, I was not so anxious for my second one.
Mm-hmm.
It is unexpected. It is violent. It is fast. And when you hear people talking about when they get into a situation where everything seems to move in slow motion, I know exactly what they're talking about. I can remember to this day, we were cruising along the river and I was a cover boat to the guy that was in front of me in a 4-boat section. And I was eating boneless turkey out of a sea ration can.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a bone in it. And I thought, wow, a bone, this is crazy. And I threw the bone over the side. And as I threw the bone over the side, the boat in front of me get hit by a rocket. And in my mind, the first thing was, what did that boat have to do with that explosion? And everything from there just slowed down. Everybody's shooting off to the left where the rocket had come from, and you could see the winking of the. Today I know they're muzzle flashes, and you hear the sounds of bullets going by you, and there's the bang and the zip and the zing and those sorts of things. And I remember distinctly one of the Vietnamese sailors tapping me on the shoulder and pointing to the other riverbank. And when we turn around, and I haven't spoken of this in a very long time, we're being shot at from the other riverbank as well. And there were just a couple of spots where there were the blinking, they looked like blinking Christmas lights, quite frankly. And our boat turned its attention there, and we took the enemy out. The boats moved out of the ambush area, and the senior advisor, Ralph Flores, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, who was my best friend, called in for helicopter gunships. And I watched as helicopter gunships came in and rearranged about 4 acres of real estate for us. And it was just, good God, thank God we had air superiority there. And that was my first firefight. We got back to the base, and I was smoking at the time. I went to light a cigarette, and I could not hold my lighter steady enough to light my cigarette. And Chief Land, who was another advisor there who had been there for a while, took the cigarette out of my mouth, and he put it in his mouth, and he lit it, and he gave it back to me, and he said to me, "It's okay, kid, you'll get used to it." And my thought was, there is no way anybody ever gets used to this. Again, my first firefight, didn't look forward to my second one. There were several more over the course of I got there in May of 1970. I didn't leave until February of 71. There were several other incidents. We worked closely with the then nascent U.S. SEAL teams. With Army long-range patrols. We would take them up into what we referred to as Indian country and drop them off, and we'd be assigned to go pick them up 2 or 3 days later. They would go and do whatever they were doing. We weren't privy to what they were doing. We were told to go drop them off and then go pick them up. And more than once, we picked them up, and they were carrying body bags when we picked them up. One or more of those, their own guys had been killed, and they didn't leave anybody behind. They brought them back. And the first time that we went up to pick up a group, and they came back and they were carrying a body bag was pretty much shocking, because the firefights I had been in prior to that, a couple of our people had sustained some minor wounds, but nobody had been killed. So this was the first time an American had been killed in action. And I can remember just the feeling was just almost overwhelming. Like, oh my God, this guy's my age, and he's never going to get any older.
Goes kind of from surreal to real at that moment, I imagine.
Yeah. I think I probably grew up more in that year in Vietnam than I did in, the 20 years before that, or the 20 years after that, quite frankly.
Sure.
You learn a lot about life. You learn a lot about people, and you learn a lot about what's really important in life. You got to be honest. You got to deal with things. I remember one time getting ready to go on patrol, and the Vietnamese sailors were late. And quite frankly, I was irritated. We're supposed to be on time. And when they finally got down there, they knew I was irritated. And the Vietnamese sailor came up to me, and they all spoke very good English. Said to me, "Listen, you guys come here for a year, and you think you're going to win the war. Don't be in a rush to get killed. This war was here long before you got here, and it's going to be here long after your year is up. So don't be in a rush to get killed." And it's like, I'll never criticize them for being late again.
Yeah.
because these guys, their whole life